What's going on, guys? We are 8 hours away from legalization in Canada, and I just have some quick news for you. This is going to be a special 420 October 17th episode. Special bonus stocks for you guys. I just want to give you guys a look into two companies today, and I just want to talk about this article that came out in the Huffington Post. U.S. cannabis producers fear Canada will dominate the industry. So essentially, uh, American companies American cannabis companies are fearful that once Canadian companies have access to full capital and full investment potential, like from American investors, Canadian investors, but also from banks and financial institutions. Essentially, they're saying that the Canadian companies are going to come to dominate the North American medical cannabis and recreational cannabis markets, and that this is going to create a problem for American pot producers once they essentially try to become competitive on the market, which they can't do right now because of regulations and certain, uh, you know, criminalized basically laws that prevent them from transporting goods across the state lines, being able to get investments from banks, being able to actually store your money in banks. It's looked at as a crime, criminal enterprise in many states. So it's almost impossible to get financing. But in Canada, once it becomes legal, and even prior to legal, like the Bank of Montreal had invested in Aurora Cannabis, a company I'm going to talk about in a little bit. But essentially, what this company, TerraTech president, was urging Donald Trump to open up the laws and allow for American companies to essentially get investments from banks and to become essentially recognized companies in the American investing world, essentially, and allow them to uh, gain the access to markets, but also access to financial capital from larger institutions rather than having to, you know, outsource them to individual supporters, individual um, financiers, and so on and so forth. So what I think, uh, what I should say, what I want to come to the conclusion from this article, what it's saying is that we are essentially looking at a time in which the Canadian companies, because of their earlier access to full capital, their earlier access to full production capacity, they're going to be able to dominate the markets, even once, you know, American states begin to fully legalize and maybe recreational down the road, federal decriminalization, maybe even legalization down the road in American society. You're going to see a situation in which Canadian companies are essentially positioned to dominate the American industry and to essentially buy up all of the American companies. So essentially, that's what this article is talking about, and just basically saying it was very fearful. Aurora here is basically talking about how they're planning on investing worldwide and globally, and they're investing in all of these different companies. So it's kind of already showing you that because companies like Aurora are able to gain so much capital from not only Canadian investors but from global investors that are interested in making huge gains in the cannabis industry, what you're seeing is you're essentially seeing these companies coming to dominate the market, not only in North America but in Australia, in Latin America, and in Europe. So we want to keep an eye on this, but essentially this is good news for Canadian stocks, and this is what we, you know, what we're waiting for, and what's going to happen once people start to realize the true true gains that and the true profits that are waiting for cannabis companies, and they're going to start to jump on the bandwagon, and everybody's going to start to want to get in for their piece of the pie. But essentially, what I want to do here is I want to just talk about Aurora Cannabis. Today they are down a little bit, but essentially they were up to 15 at one point. But when you look at the chart, you know, overall you see pretty good gains over the last 6 months to a year. Although they were up 14 at one point earlier, maybe late last year, maybe earlier this year. It's basically shot right back up, and it's only going to be going higher, especially once you get full legalization in the recreational, and you see their actual profits in the demand. Once you see how the demand is actually there, then it's going to become very profitable, and the price is going to jump very quickly. But this is was an announcement that came out today. It was talked about by Rich TV Live and a few other YouTube stock investors out there as well. Basically, what it's talking about is that Aurora is going to have these vape-ready CBD oil cartridges ready to go, ready for sale. Essentially, what they are is they're pre-filled cartridges that can be attached to any vape pen, not necessarily just the Aurora vape pens. And Aurora has their vape pens licensed through Namaste. So Namaste is actually producing the vaporizer technology and the vaporizer pens that are you can use these pre-filled cartridges for, or your own vape pen that you have, and as long as it's a 500 series, and you can attach the pre-filled CBD oil cartridges to the pen, and that allows you for to medicate in that way. So essentially, what they're doing is they're diversifying their market share, and they're looking to produce products that are not only filled with not only like THC consuming, but also looking for CBD as well. So they're capitalizing on both markets. And one of the big things about this is that a lot of people don't realize that this vape cartridges are going to be huge. They're going to be so popular, and they already are popular, and I know because I know lots of people that use them. But just the fact that these are going to be the only right off the bat, the only licensed cartridges, the only ones that are legally available in Canada, I think that people are going to get used to them. They're going to like them if the product is is somewhat decent, which I don't doubt that it is. Aurora has been showing to be putting out premium quality product. But the simple fact of the matter is that these vape pens are essentially just a small side of what they're going to be looking at in terms of their actual production capacity, and once they're fully up to production capacity. And Aurora Sky is already fully producing, but essentially this is going to be a winner. Either way you want to look at it, Aurora Cannabis is going to be one of the biggest gainers in the next year. And if you don't believe me, or if you're not in the know, then you better ask somebody, because what's going to happen in the next few months is going to be just complete destruction and domination by these companies, Aurora, Aphria, Canopy. They're going to start to dominate the market, and the ones that are partnered with them, like Namaste, companies like the Green Organic Dutchman, although Aurora chose to not fully advance all of their stock options, which I think we need to look at it from a perspective that in the long run it might have just not have been the right way to go, because there's so many other companies in which they want to invest in, and companies like Shoom, companies that are producing just as good quality product, that they want to diversify. So they want to not just put all their eggs in one basket and put all their money into TGOD. They want to be able to diversify and buy out a bunch of different companies, so they have a bunch of different products that they can offer people. And that goes for quality as well as distribution and expense, obviously. So what the other company I want to talk about here is Canopy Rivers. So like I just talked about Canopy Growth, and I said like the three big winners are going to be Aphria, Aurora, and Canopy Growth. And what Canopy Rivers is actually a spin-off and a basically an investing fund for Canopy Growth. And what they're doing is, because Canopy Growth is so expensive, they wanted to create a diversified stock portfolio that others could invest in for a cheaper price, but see the same investment chances, or at least invest into the same company that Canopy Growth or Tweed and all the other companies that is obviously owned by Canopy Growth. So just simply, you can get into these companies without having to pay the $60-$70 asking price of the Canopy Growth stock. So you can get into Canopy Rivers today for $5.76. You can get into Canopy Growth at like $70 today. So which one do you want? I think Canopy Rivers is the much better choice for a long-term investment today, and I think that by this time by the end of the year, in the next 3 or 4 months, you're going to see this going to $15, maybe even upwards of 20. So that's going to be looking at 3 to 4 times growth, 300 to 400% growth, which I think is reasonable with a company like Canopy Rivers. Like what we've seen with Canopy growth in the last year or two is insane. And if Canopy Rivers can even tap into a fraction of that growth potential, then you're going to see quite a good return on your value if this is a company you want to look at investing in. Now the thing about Canopy Rivers is that they are more of an investment company rather than a growth company. They're a cultivation company, although obviously they are owned by Canopy, so they have quite a bit of investment backing. But what you can see just by going to their website is that they are essentially looking to diversify into many different companies. They're looking to sort of like Aurora is doing with their purchasing of the Green Organic Dutchman, TGOD, and with Shoom and Australis. You're seeing just the way in ICC, International Cannabis Corporation, you're seeing basically the ability for these companies to diversify their market share and buy up all of the kind of players that are going to be making kind of strides in the future, whether it's in the Latin American markets, whether it's in Australia or the European markets, like Aurora is doing with their Nordic facility in Denmark. So yeah, this is not loading, but as we can see from just the discussion forum, it's basically just talking about the outgrowth from Canopy Growth Corporation and the fact that a lot of companies, essentially that Canopy is going to be able to outgrow a lot of companies simply because of the market share of Canopy Growth. So when you connect a stock like Canopy Rivers and to a company like Tweed and Canopy Growth, because of the investments they have already in that company, they can then build this company with those investments and continue to grow their stock portfolios by simply leveraging themselves to Canopy Growth. So like I said, our mission is to accelerate success in the global cannabis economy. Canopy Rivers is a unique investment and operating platform structured to pursue opportunities in the emerging global cannabis sector. The company is managed by an experienced team of qualified financial and technical professionals with deep industry experience and relationship networks. But what makes Canopy Rivers truly unique is the company's strategic partnership and cornerstone investment from Canopy Growth Corporation, like I was saying. So essentially, the big thing about these guys is, like I said, their diversification. They're buying up all of these companies. TerraSend, which is a company that's shot up to $13 in the last few months. Basically all of these companies are either CBD producers or straight cultivation, like TerraSend, straight dry herb flower cultivation. All of these companies are going to be big winners. Some of them aren't even listed on the stock exchange because they're private companies that are simply just owned by companies like Canopy Rivers, and with investments through Canopy Growth. But essentially, this is what you're looking at. If you invest in a company like Canopy Rivers, what you're looking at is a market share of all of these companies and the ability to invest in all of these companies without paying the high price. Like TerraSend is trading at $13. So getting at Canopy Rivers for $5.67 instead of TerraSend for $13 is a much better price and valuation. You can see much better growth in the long term. So a company like LivWell as well, I think maybe is a one to look at as well if you want to look for a cheaper one. LivWell is going to be another big producer, maybe to talk about in one of my stock picks in the future. But as for now, I just want to end this video here, and I thank you guys for tuning in so far and for subscribing and liking if you have. If not, feel free to subscribe and like. I'm going to be coming out with more stock picks of the week. And thank you for following me down the revolutionary road. And let's take back the world as we know it.